Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Arkham Roundtable podcast. Today, we are here to talk about a variety of topics in Arkham. I actually just got mine. I know what mine is.
Oh, what is it then?
So mine is actually something that I've talked about recently. And I actually am very well aware of it with how we've played, because we played a Scarlet Keys scenario today, and we played Carnival of Horrors today. And
they were technically both Scarlet Keys scenarios.
Yes, they technically were. Yeah, they technically were. So this has kind of been a little concern of mine, and I'd love to know if you think I'm crazy or this could actually be a trend, because it comes down to two things: either it's because of the Scarlet Keys or it's because of Old Keyring 3 and Shed of Light. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there is potential for there to be a new Asphalov hump in terms of shroud values for locations to kind of counterbalance that. It's like the whole new, Asphalov is getting rid of the locations really easily. Is that actually, so we need to get 3-1 locations, or is shroud values just getting higher due to the concealed mechanic in the Scarlet Keys? I say this as well because also the Fortune and Folly also had much higher shroud values on average. And you compare it to Carnival of Horrors today, which is shroud values, we were laughing at them. We were like, look at this, old school,
Yeah.
But even Edge of the Earth's shroud values weren't didn't seem as crazy high as Scarlet Keys. Again, this could be because the concealed mechanic directly interacts with it. Mm-hmm. But also Fortune and Folly also had that. So I'm just I'm worried that I think it's a bad choice because it actually leads into your point. It actually kills the idea of,
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of realized that. I don't think it's necessarily, specifically because of Shed Light and Old Keyring, because in that case, you expect to see, 3-ish Shroud, right? Because, 2 you don't want, because then you just get the things for free. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to get around. 3, at least I have to spend something else in addition to the Old Keyring charge or whatever. I think it's more a reaction to, it is possibly partially because of the concealed mechanics. They wanted to make they found the campaign too easy, maybe.
Yeah.
And that was one of the levers that they chose to use to make it more difficult because of the concealed mechanic. But I think it is probably potentially reactionary to, they just expect people to play the game differently now. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, they expected you to throw investigate actions and stuff, even if you had 2 or 3 book. But now you look at your 2 or 3 book, you're like, this is trash. I'm just not going to do that ever. Someone else can deal with it. Mm-hmm. So, I guess if you were looking at... No, that kind of tracks. You would... So if you think that they're raising shroud levels to compete with investigators who stack a book to get over them and pass them consistently, then you would see a similar trend with enemies. But you kind of do. Mm-hmm. Even in the Scarlet Keys, where the shroud value kind of corresponds to the fight value for some portion of the campaign. The enemies in Fortune and Folly they had 5s.
Yes, yeah, no, the enemies, that is something that also, because there's the guy who shows up, the mid boss, who had 5 or even 6 even. He was a mindless dancer. Mm-hmm. And I guess when I say I don't expect them to make the new baseline of shroud being 4 or 5. But even just getting rid of 2s for the most part, where 2 was relatively common before.
Yeah, they showed up once in a while at least.
Yeah, so 3s are the new norm. Turning from a 3.2 average to even a 3.5 average is a big jump against the idea of being able to play with flashlight. It makes it easier, but also I think is just, I'm curious to see if that happens. This is kind of just my mad ravings, but yeah. But I think it could be because concealed, right? Like you said, they found it too easy, so they just bumped it up a bit.
Yeah, I think we'll see for sure from the next expansion. But what do you think, Bryn?
No thoughts.
No pans.
Yeah, it is also a lot easier as the card pool increases. It's a lot easier to stack a single number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you have more options
than it used to be.
Yeah.
Because before you were I got the dock, and I got magnifying glass. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And 2's kind of tough if I've only got a 4 to start with. Mm-hmm. It can be. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's fair too, because realistically they have a very hard aspect of designing this game where someone's first box could be someone's 9th box, right? And that seems tough, right? Especially because there's no like rotating pool of cards where they could have some like design control over that, right?
I mean, like they could, they just kind of choose not to.
Yeah, I mean, like that's why I started to try to do like we try to do challenge runs, but also like make it so like people have like and on our Patreon like the play along league because it's
deck building constraints.
it's kind of like a standard environment in the game. Yeah, but I think funnily enough though, if to step on some toes of your point coming up, if there was like less specialization into one stat, and it was like more like everyone was rolling banks, it would kind of potentially fix the issue that this could be. Potentially. But that's like also saying like it's easy to paint a beautiful painting, you know?
Yeah. I do think the game would be more traditionally Arkham Horror if it was more characters like Arkham Rolling Banks. Arkham Banks.
Yeah.
That's what they call
No,
it.
that is, yeah. That is, it's pretty accurate, yeah.
Yeah, if more characters like Rolling Banks and like you were expected to use your skills
Across the board.
Like just generally like make use of all 4 of them instead of just I am the fist guy. I use fist, and if I don't use fist, I don't do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because like this is even like one of those things that even like when we build our decks, it's like, hey Travis, can you give me a foot symbol for this test? And you're like, no, I just have book symbols in my
Like
hand.
in my hand, I'm like, I have Prax Makes Perfect that has a foot symbol on it, I think, and then everything else is like book or 2 book.
Or brain, right? Like the stat that like kind of always lives is like brain, right? But so this kind of leads into yours. So why don't you talk about your talking point?
Yeah, my point was that like I think the acknowledgement of like hyper specialization and not forcing players to play around it has kind of led the game down a negative, not necessarily negative, but like a less interesting design path, I guess. If you look back at the early expansions, it seems like they had a very different vision from the game. I think the game could benefit from more designs like that now. Things like people complain about Spires of Carcosa, so like I can't just investigate my punch guy who only brings guns and has 9 punch to fight things can't ever use his book to investigate. It's like, well, maybe you should just put some cards in that let you use your book. Which was like a little bit rougher when there's a smaller card pool for sure, but yeah, like Spires of Carcosa or there's like the Avian Thrall and the Poltergeist that like punish you for not bringing certain card types to your deck, but also like kind of give you a workaround for them, sort of. And like I think the game would be better if we saw more of those, like things that like punish people for playing just ignore some of their stats.
Yeah.
Like encounter cards are like, hey, is a like Threads of Fate, I guess, could easily have an encounter card that was like make a fist 4 test for each point you fail by putting one of your clues down and call it smash and grab or something like that. Like force the seeker players to not use their fist ever.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. And I think even like the design of you like in Dunwich, and then also you see it a little bit in Carcosa. Like I love the Avian Thrall, right? Because it's a scary bird if you're not bringing a gun for it. You know, like apart from like if you're building like. I think like Nat Cho can punch his way through it, right? Because this number just gets high enough. But then otherwise, like you have to plan for the campaign, and there's still like aspects of that. You know, like in Innsmouth, you're like, okay, we're gonna have to plan something for like the Deep One Bull, right? But that's mostly just because he shows up on scenario 1, not because like he's gonna counteract a strategy that exists in your deck, right? Yeah. And like also like the conglomeration of spheres that just eat melee weapons.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of complaints in the early days about those kinds of things, like Spires of Carcosa, to a lesser extent Poltergeist, like conglomerations of sphere people might have complained about. There's the one pathway and where Doom awaits that kind of sucks, but like I think those kinds of designs would be like make the game more interesting these days. With they're right, those kind of sucked sometimes in the past because you couldn't actually put cards in your deck to deal with them sometimes. You felt like at the mercy of the investigator you chose, but I think that there's more than enough tools nowadays that the game would benefit from those more. I think the designers kind of let the whiners win on that. Because after Carcosa, you just don't see it anymore. It's like Forgotten Age, you don't really see any of those super punishing mechanics like that. There's like the vengeance mechanic kind of where they're like, oh, you might want to evade some of the snakes sometimes, but like.
I mean, I think that's why Forgotten Age is kind of interesting, because like especially if you play like 2 where you fight and then you evade, it's just like it's a little bit different. It's like it changes like the meta of the campaign, like the strategy you're supposed to bring. But like there's nothing that like rewards you across the board for like, because in 2 players, when I play, it's kind of funny because when I play two-handed, if you like you do so much better with 2 flexes, right? Than otherwise. And I think the game would be more fun if everyone kind of had, like when we played our first games and like you were Jenny, you were Rex, I was Ashcan Pete, and we were all doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Because that's what the card pool demanded of the time, right? Because you kind of just have to do a little bit of everything. You know?
Yeah. No, like it did, the card pool did used to be like a huge limiting factor. You couldn't just build a green character exclusively for combat because you would have like 15 empty slots.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think that's like more fun to play with in general. If the games reward you like that, or ask you to play like that, like minor spoilers for you guys want to know what I'm talking about. But we played a scenario today where for the last 3 turns of the game, Brandon and I just like sat there and watched Justin fight, like, which was it was really really good because we knew the entire time like we're gonna win.
Yeah.
But like Brandon and I are just kind of.
Yeah, our decks are also kind of goated at this step. So.
Yeah.
I know, but that's part too. Is they're hyper specialized, right? Like your deck sets people up, and once they're set up, you don't really need to do much else. I get the clues at that point. There was no reason for me getting clues. The thing to be done was fighting, so we sat there and watched Justin fight. Which it's.
I don't know what you're talking about. I did like 3 points of 3 whole points of damage.
Yeah, I know. I effectively did a bunch, but it's.
It is, but no, and it kind of all goes back to when you point to Miskatonic Museum, right? How like a true fighter, like pure fighter, doesn't do anything.
Yeah. That clearly wasn't
unless they got stunning blow.
Yeah, unless they got stunning blow. But now, like what I try to do when I play Miskatonic Museum, if I'm the solo fighter, I just tell everyone else I'm gonna try to kill this thing 4 times if I have to. It's gonna die, or we're gonna die.
Yeah. It's more fun.
But if you can point to that and then be like, especially because Dunwich was designed before it was released, right? That they had there seemed to be a different intention for how. Decks were built like between like.
Yeah,
things,
you still see it a little bit in Carcosa too.
I mean, even in the Return to box, right? Like, Return to box brings that freight car that you can fall off of if you fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I love
X
that
tests in a row.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of thing is, maybe not necessarily just killing you for failing, but like that's a solid way to enforce like, hey, bring wild symbols.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you might need to use them.
Or like even like just like a card that's like just has like 3 symbols that's like good enough to play. Just like bring it.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Like what's it called? Inquiring Mind used to be really good, and now it's kind of just like I'm not going to play that because why would I?
Yeah.
Like I don't need to.
Yeah. It's fine, but like you don't. Yeah, Prince Ray, you don't really need it.
Yeah, like it used to be really really good, and like. You kind of put it in every yellow deck because 3 wild symbols was enough to buy you out of anything.
Yeah. It's even like Take the Initiative, like obviously a very good card, right? But even then, like this goes like to what I was saying in a previous, like when we were talking about Stella, just the card pool is so strong now that the Mythos deck is like less scary, right? That even like Take the Initiative, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to need that in this deck anymore, apart from like cases of like Joe Diamond, right?
Yeah.
But if I have 3, I'm like, I'll be fine. We'll find other ways to heal or survive.
Yeah, you can win the game so efficiently now that it doesn't matter. You can just race the game. You can just eat whatever setbacks they throw at you.
Yeah.
Right. I think especially if they start design campaigns like the Scarlet Keys with the intention of like limiting that hyper specialization really makes the game less fun and less interesting because it pushes out all those generalist things and like if you start designing enemies that have 5, 6, 7 punch to deal with, then you have to play those characters who can get to those punch levels to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like Scarlet Keys is a big beast to explore, and even though we're on our 3rd campaign, I feel like we haven't seen a lot of it as that much into it. But I feel like with the Shroud Values being higher in Scarlet Keys for the conceal mechanic, it does make generalists like worse at that. It also has that. I'm curious to see in future ones like with Roland Banks in our first playthrough. The guns seem so bad, you need to like be able to like have a high fist to just routinely bring out
Yeah, it was pretty
concealed cards, but that also might just be the meta that settles, just like, hey, we're going to be evading snakes more than killing them in Forgotten Age, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how that goes. Because, like, I can't imagine playing Scarlet Keys as, like, a mystic without a Wither or a Sixth Sense in your pocket, you know, if you're going to, like, try to actually conceal things. Because, like, the brain is the only one that doesn't, which makes sense, because you can't, like, actively use it for something, right? But it still just feels, like, strange that, like, it was like, then how did this... Because then if I'm going to play a Mystic, I probably have to play a 5-brain Mystic even more, which pushes the 4-brain Mystics even further down.
Yeah.
Right? And then, like, Amina came out with it, and it's just like, what do I do here? And like,
I
it's...
think this was a particularly bad expansion for it to show up in.
Yeah. It just seems... I don't know.
Yeah.
But...
No, I think it also opens up a lot of really neat design space to, like, expect people to test more than one stat in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could have, like, enemies that take 1 less damage when you attack them, but you can make, like, book 2 tests, and if you succeed, you ignore that ability until the end of the turn, or something like that. And they get -2 fight or something to encourage you not to just, like, beat them to death. You have to do a little bit more. Yeah, and again, like, I think cards like Spires of Carcosa are good for the game.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Bryn and I
understand why they're frustrating, but, like, I think you're wrong.
Yeah, like Bryn and I in our assets only. When I was Bob, we were Bob and York, and we still, like, fudged our way through Spires of Carcosa with our assets only run.
Yeah, like,
so, like, it's possible.
You put together enough books if you plan for it.
You just gotta, like, because there was a time when Will York, you got both of them off there.
Bangla Jinxes is like a lot of books, though.
Like, it's like one of those things where, like, you need to, like, do a lot of pieces to get it there, but I do think that if you... It's better if your deck has to, like use 2 pieces to solve a problem that's one of their weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
I think that's, like, ultimately good in the game for you to have to spend more resources on things that are your weakness. And you should be forced to spend things that are on your weaknesses, right? Like, I mean, like, even playing Carson, there's that balance that you have where it's like, okay, this test I don't want to fail, so I'm going to overcommit to it because I have to at least try, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of the time it's just like we try not to get to 2 hit points because that kills me if I fail, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is like if I wanna pass a test, I gotta be putting like 4 or 6 points into it, which is pretty alright. But the flip side of that is that like, I think it allows you, like, you guys to specialize into your thing even more, because, like, whatever the one we need is, that's the one I do.
Yep.
Right? Like, I get to play with your cards effectively.
Yeah. I mean, I think Carson is a very successful investigator.
He's really cool. There's a lot of cool things you can do with him. I wish he could play green cards, but I understand why he can't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he breaks the symmetry of the...
Yeah.
It's fine.
But, like Carson does.
That's
like,
a really good point, actually. Like, why would you play a flex who isn't Carson when you have someone, like, for example, in our play group, why would we play a flex that isn't Carson for when we have someone who's just going to fight and someone who's just going to get clues? Because they will always do it better than, like, random Jenny or, like, Duke or whatever. So why not have someone who just give them an extra action? So they can do it more.
From, like, a pure spike standpoint, I think it is a hard point to argue, but I think the reality is that it would be boring to play, right? Because, like, Ashcan Pete, like, I love Carson and I'm playing Carson right now and he's a blast, but I also love my no-fail Ashcan Pete. It's a very powerful deck, but just a different type of powerful, you know? But I think, like, it's true from, like, if you're going for, like, pure boring optimal, it's probably hard to beat Carson in 2 specialized in 3-player. Like, just for, like, the try-hard spike. You know, but I think the reality is there's so many great investigators I like playing. I just want to play them. You know.
Yeah, no, it is probably pretty tough, especially like low XP. Pretty tough to compete with that, where you can just be like, well, this guy has 5 number, so like, so do I.
Yeah.
For part of my turn.
Yeah, for the one action, which, like, realistically is how often you're gonna be doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, in the run we're doing, where we're having a very powerful time, I point that a lot of that power directly to Carson Sinclair, because you're even playing a very reasonable Seeker in terms of ability and stat line, right?
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you were, like, Mandy,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, part of it's also, like, you're playing an investigator who gets a weapon they're not supposed to have.
That is true,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Like we are admittedly playing
Like, other
some,
cards you're not supposed to have.
aggressively medium cards to play with cards that the investigators are not supposed to have. Like, I've got down the rabbit hole. I'm not supposed to be able to put that in my deck. It turns out the axe is nuts in high fight investigators. So.
Yeah.
But I mean,
And
like
Daniela's card is like kind of the power level is predicated on her not having access to particularly efficient weapons.
Yeah. All that said, though, I do think that this kind of fits into their design, like, idea behind the game, because this is like a player working together with another player to, like, hit a power level that's higher than normal, right? And I think that even though, like, this is a very powerful, like, especially Daniela with the runic axe is nuts, but I do think that this is, like, Bryn and I having to make room for it. Like, I'm running, like, just, like, my backup weapons, right? Like, it's taking 2 people to get here, right? I'm not, like, I think it's fun, and I think it's actually, like, probably good for the game that these kind of crazy things can exist.
Yeah, I mean, also our piles have, like, what, 30 odd XP in them, and we're not at the end of the game yet, so.
Yeah. I mean, like, no, I don't think that
Like, there is
situation
that too.
in particular is, like, degenerating like that, but it is kind of a, like, a symptom of the problem where, like, Bryn's effectively giving up his deck to supercharge yours.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
And
yeah.
so, like, you know, it is just better to be insanely good at one thing in the game than it is to do anything else, even medium.
We should maybe try. It could be fun to try. Check out the difference between, like, what we have now and then, like, a Carson with 2 flexes. See if it is also.
I bet Carson ended up doing a lot more things on his own.
I would agree, but I am curious to see what the difference is, right? Because I know Bryn says he has a lot more Carson decks brewing in the back of his brain, right?
What?
Because like
I don't know what you're talking about.
But I think that also is what it strips down to in 3-player. There's more of a demand than like 2 flexes and 2 player is the way to go, which is kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
But in 3 players, I do think the specialization is required, and same in 4 players as well, right? Probably a little bit less because there's like more, you know, there's like another player to help you get there, but.
Yeah, like in 2-player, you definitely even if your guys are like you are playing, you know, a fighter and an investigator, like you do want both of them to have an option for doing the other's job. Because sometimes it needs to happen. Sometimes you don't need to be doing the other guy's job, but you do need to be like making your actions count, because otherwise you're falling behind the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of funny too, because like the best way to, like, even though like enemies show up and they're scary, you need to solve them. If you just like flex even just to grab more clues, it goes back to the thing though, like, you know, you get good tempo on the game and it's just like absurd compared to what the game can do to you.
Yeah, like the game has no way to like drag you back.
Yeah, but I mean, I like Spires of Carcosa. I remember when I got it when I was playing I was a Stella deck, and I was like, oh god. And you just have to like, the thing is though, like in the scenarios where it shows up, which I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong on this, is Curtain Call and Phantom of Truth. Those are the 2 where I recall it showing up.
Sounds right.
Those 2 Doom clocks are actually different, right?
I think it also shows up in the Above and Below one, maybe?
It might.
Yeah,
Actually,
I think it does.
I can pull it out right now. Nope, not that one. But I mean, like, in Curtain Call and Phantom of Truth, the Doom Clock is different, right? Like, in Curtain Call, it actually doesn't matter, because you just kill Big Butt Baby again. Evil Portents. Just those ones, and then I got all these.
Yeah, I was just looking for that. I think that, like, yeah, it feels a little bit like the designers kind of let the players desire to, like, do their one thing and nothing else dictate the balance of the game. It does.
Black Stars Rise, but once again, Doom works differently there.
Yeah,
right.
No, it's a really interesting card for that scenario, actually.
So it actually, like, doesn't... It matters, but it doesn't matter in the way that when you read this card traditionally, you don't necessarily need to solve it as... You want to solve it, but, like... Because Doom works differently. I mean,
You might want to solve it, you might not, actually.
in Phantom of Truth, it works different. It might not work differently. It might work the same, but even then, you just, I don't know, do it.
Phantom of Truth is a wild ride, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'd like to see more cards that force you to deal with the, like, low barrier to, like, do the thing, but if you can't, it's very punishing.
Oh, fuck me. I'm trying to find that. Here, 1 second.
Yeah, they could never print a card like Spires of Carcosa today, because that would... You have to play high book investigators if this card was like the Scarlet Keys, right? Because Shroud Values are so absurdly high. You pop this on a 5 Shroud location, you're just like... If you don't have someone who's got, like, 6, 7 book, you're like, oh, I guess we'll just lose.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is true.
You just eat 2 doom.
Some of these do... like, I understand how... If you're playing, like, Investigating Ash Campy, you suddenly just can't interact with this card. You're like, cool, that's the job I came here to do, but also 2 Ancient Evils, please. And that's not ideal. But, as long as it doesn't actively stop. Like, there's that one scenario in Dunwich where you have to investigate with an action on the card to get clues, and if you can't do that, you can't progress the scenario.
Yes.
I think that's an issue. Where, like, sure, maybe you brought some sort of offbeat plan to investigate, and like that should be able to work. Like, maybe not well. I'm not even saying that it needs to be good, but like in that scenario, you actually can't play.
You should be able to cobble together like enough book tests between your teammates to do it. Like,
yeah,
I think that kind of pressure is good.
I mean,
you have to investigate like a 4 Shroud location, and if you're playing one of those kinds of investigators, you probably have 2. So like perception takes you to even.
Yeah, I think like if it was like a 2 value.
Yeah,
like,
right. Like I'm not suggesting that that should absolutely never happen, but I think in that scenario, it's like a little bit. I mean, they fix it in the return too. It's you just have to successfully discover a clue.
Yeah.
Which works.
Yeah, but I mean, like effects like this, like I get what you're saying. Like effects that progress the game should be treated as if Ash Campy can do it without Duke.
Yeah.
But effects that hinder the game, right? That like hinder you from winning or slow you down. Those don't need to be treated the same way, right?
No,
because you're not progressing the game.
Not quite the same, right? Because it's not like you can still try to race it. You can still try to play the game against it. As opposed to like I don't know if there's any other scenarios that are like that, but that's the one that comes to mind.
I don't think so.
Like I think mostly they've stopped doing that, which is probably good.
Yeah.
Because like you should be able to approach a scenario with multiple different plans. Otherwise, it becomes very stale very quickly. And that like there's a reason that we don't play Dunwich again very often, and it's not that like it's not entirely fun. It's just kind of like, how do you win this one? Cool, you bring a high punch investigator, you bring a high book investigator, and you bring a high brain investigator, and that's what you do, right? If you're only playing with 2, it gets a little bit more interesting because somebody's got to do both jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for the location talk about, you have to investigate it. Like I agree with Justin. I don't think that's like an issue if it's a lower Shroud. 4 Shroud is a little tough, but like if it's a 2 Shroud location, that's a totally acceptable.
Yeah, like the first.
thing.
I mean,
I think it's like 3
it happens
and
on
then
2.
4.
Yeah, I think it's like 3 and then
3,
then 4, and like the three is like, all right, but that's like that. It's
I think
tough.
3 is tough if it's like 1 per investigator clues. Like that's pretty reasonable. What are the odds that you brought like 3 people or whatever, 2 or 3 people, and like 9 of you brought someone who was 3 book?
The intellect economy is in shambles.
I think also like stuff like that, it would be cool. Like stuff like that's like cool, but if there was an additional way on the card to like like hurt yourself or do something to like reduce the Shroud value, stuff like that would also then work. No, but then it still just kind of punishes the generalist, doesn't it? This is all Daisy Walker's fault. 5 book? What was she thinking?
Yeah.
She's thinking she's not very good at a lot of things.
One thing I have noticed is like how differently the card game plays from other Arkham Files games. Like playing last time we played Eldritch Swarming, like we dumpstered it, but
Yeah,
not the
but that's
point of this,
because
right?
there's like a arguably missing line of text on a card.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, like in that game, you like show up to things and you're just like, I'm gonna see how it goes, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going through a gate, do the objective, and they're like, make a lore test and then make a flex test. And you're like, okay. I mean, there's none of that in this game. Like you show up intending to deal with certain problems because you know what those problems are gonna be, and it's just.
I think a reason for that is that it seems like the thesis for what this game is trying to replicate is like a Call of Cthulhu or like a D&D scenario where the DM has your back. It's like, don't worry, you're fine. Like you're just gonna do the ride. You're gonna succeed. I want you to succeed. And this section that you and I have talked about, like in Dunwich, if the roof falls on you in the first scenario, you get rewarded for it because you failed and you kind of go forward. If you don't get Armitage, you get experience instead because you missed out on this card in your deck.
Same thing with the train.
And yeah, the train. And like, but I actually feel like the newer campaigns don't have the kind of fail forward in the same way the old ones do.
No.
Where like, you succeed, you get your experience.
If you fail, you get nothing.
If you fail, you get nothing. Yeah.
If you fail, you don't even get to like play it. You don't even get to read the story, man.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things where like the fail forward is like the coolest part of what this game is, right?
Yeah.
And I think because there's fail forward, in theory, the game should be okay with you failing more, right?
It is something like it really misses on the Eldritch horror theme of like what the genre kind of is, where you're supposed to feel a big part of the Cthulhu mythos is like humans feeling insignificant and powerless in the face of like the eldritch monstrosities or whatever, and you don't get that. You show up and you're just like, I can kill anything.
Yeah. Smash cut to our
Yeah,
gameplay today.
yeah. Like it's no, you're very much right. Like they want you to succeed. They don't. Apparently, you're not supposed to struggle. You just like kind of do well and get the game handed to you, or you do poorly and you get nothing, so you should do better next time.
And I mean, like, if we look at our failed run of like Scarlet Keys, right? Like, if there was some fail forward in there, we would have like probably been able to pad it out a little bit better.
Yeah, might like work with it.
Yeah.
But there wasn't. They're just like, you get nothing.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, it's also probably why, people try decks that just like go hard, because your deck, you're how good your deck gets depends on your success level, right? And without failing forward, you lose out on that, right? Like, because
Your deck has to be efficient in the first scenarios, because if you don't get experience. You don't get to play with your cool, fun cards.
Yeah. A great scenario that I think actually kind of accomplishes what I would love to see more is In Too Deep, where there's like a side objective inside of that scenario. Like a Midnight Mask is another one, right? Like the first time you play it, you're like, we got 2 cultists. That was crazy. The next time you get 3, you're like, holy crap, we got 3, right? But you're still succeeding, or you're like failing because you don't get all 6, but you're still succeeding in the scenario, but you're not succeeding in the alternate goal.
Yeah,
likewise,
it's really good for that, actually.
Yes,
like with the keys and the Pit of Despair.
the small little like mini objectives within a scenario, I think, and like also like a metric in which you can score yourself. Yeah, I think that's really cool, and like a good way to have a player lose a scenario but still like feel like they survived to the end. Right?
Yeah, look at those, like the scenarios I have that are generally well received. Like Midnight Mask is generally well regarded.
Threads of Fate
is generally well regarded. In Too Deep is generally well liked. I think Pit of Despair is well liked, even if people think it's difficult.
The only thing
Depths of Yoth is well liked.
The only thing is I always remember with Pit of Despair is just how much I realize how much more in the future Bryn thinks than I do. Because mine is like, I'm never gonna die. I'm just gonna walk into this location. Yeah. But Bryn's like computing all of the different like vertices that this location can be, and I'm like, yeah. But I mean, like, once again, like that's, I think that like even with all this, I think there's a lot of like, it's got to be a hard balance to like, especially in a cooperative game, different than competitive, of like getting all this across. But I do wish that there was less number big, even though I love number big, you know.
Yeah, no, I definitely think they heard kind of a vocal minority in the early days of the game. Or like, not even minority, but like a vocal portion of the player base found that having to investigate your location with the few cards we had was unfun, I guess. And they kind of made the game less interesting for it. Less interesting than it could have been. Yeah.
Also, boo to the people who broke Double or Nothing. I just remember watching our earlier videos and Bryn just used it on just shooting a guy with a gun.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, let's go!
Yeah,
Yeah, shoot the guy, shoot the guy!
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that one also, like, as the card pool gets bigger, it's like, I want it to be back, but, like, it can never come back.
No, it can never come back.
Never.
It is much too strong. Alright, so the last thing I wanted to do for this is I wanted to see if I could find it, but one of the new designers had just an Arkham Horror, please. But they shared an upcoming art from the new one, and we've actually never talked about this.
Oh, it's that goat thing or whatever?
Like, yeah, the bear with like the mushrooms
the bear.
growing out of it.
Oh, I hope it's Ithaca.
Yeah, I mean, like, because like, there's been like little hints.
Where's my Canada?
Yeah, let's go to
Campaign.
Canada. All we got is what is it? Quebec and Montreal. The Montreal and
Montreal.
yeah. In
War of the Elder Gods.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's sick.
Alaska was like kind of Canada for a while.
It's one of those things where I can't fucking find it.
Oh yeah, you searched for the word art.
Art, yeah. Yeah, okay, let's search expansion. Let's go there. No, I'm just talking too
Maybe
much.
spoiler.
Oh yeah, let's do spoiler. Nope. 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 Big spoiler.
Major spoiler.
Maybe I'm gonna search Duke. Because Duke was the designer that... Oh, but there's a character in this game named Duke. Oh, here we go. We got it. Let's go. All right.
Actually, it is. It's the bear.
Let me get it on the screen for people watching at home. Oh, shit. It's a fucking web page. Are you fucked? All right, I gotta do this the long way. It's sick art, though. That is actually... I do think that they've done a great job of... now that they're starting to get through their slush pile of art, a lot of the new art is really nice. But also, apparently, a lot of the new art that I thought was new is actually old art. Yeah, I was telling Bryn about that. There's so many cards in Scarlet Keys. I was like, look at this brand new art. Nope, it's from the card game.
Of course it is.
All right, we're going to call this one Bear. All right. Give me Bear.
It's bear.
No, that's
Just stick
fair.
him right in the middle. Don't make him fit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the guy. They don't need to see us.
That's
Yeah.
some annihilation.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely seems to be a lot of inspiration from that. So, yeah.
So this like shit could be like Chevy.
Yep, could be Chubby. And also, like, the other hint was that there was, like, a festival, right? Which also, made me think of maybe, like, the Hungry Hungry Toad.
Yeah.
But I do think that this turns
doesn't really
away.
look like anything Seattle related though.
No, it doesn't, yeah.
Like the Nordic animals and the Northern Lights make me maybe think Ithaca, but also like the forests. But it is probably Chevy if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I really hope that it's like actually just like an old one and not a pile of static or goop or whatever.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, I recently did...
Ambiguous object du jour you came up with this time?
I was streaming on Saturday, and I did a tier list for... I was just ranking old ones just for fun, right? And I was like, there's a lot of goop in the actual, like, Lovecraftian mythos, but I'm sick of goop. We don't... There's official goop there. We have unofficial goop. We have unofficial static. Just give us, like, a good story involving, like, an actual...
Old one.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I think Umar Doth is cool. I think Umar Doth is a cool design that they made, right? but I don't like the static monsters. The Nameless Madness fits in with like the lore of it all, right? Like it's there, but it's not really like an exciting finish. And I would love just, you just have a big battle with Shubby at the end of this. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think, wouldn't that be great if it was like sort of like a survival horror sort of deal at the end? They send like waves of children at you, and
You're in like a cabin.
Yeah, you have to like survive for like 2 or 3, or for like a full agenda or whatever, and then they slow down and she gets tired or something like that, and then you have to go fire.
There's actually a lot of custom scenarios where there's like the idea of like you're holding out in like a location while monsters attack you, and I'd love to see them actually do that in the game.
Yeah, that'd actually be a wild, like such a much better conclusion, I think, than like the whole you get to fight the Ancient One and like kill them or whatever. Is like it culminates in you like being in a cabin. You just have to survive the night of the festival or whatever. And after that, they're like, oh, it's not happening again for 200 years. You don't have to worry about it.
Just have to survive at that point. There's nothing you can do. It's hopeless.
Yeah, that'd be a lot. That'd be some real nice Lovecraftian gameplay there.
This guy's cool though. I think I'm very excited to see what it does. My guess, is it's Shubby or Ithaqua. I think those would be.
No, this guy's gonna be a new investigator.
Yeah. Billy Bearson.
Yeah, that's what they call him.
Yeah. The other last, for people who might not know this, because this was at BusterCon, they said that the title is the longest that's ever had, so it's going to be called the Festival. What the? Julie's calling me? All right. I'm going to just pause the video 1 second.
Okay.
She hung up on me. It's okay. We can close up the video.
Immediately.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be called The Dreaded Investigation of Billy Bearson. That's going to be the campaign
That sounds right.
Yeah. Hello. Hello, Travis. Hello.
Believe me, Mr.
Oh! Yeah. But I'm hoping we get some news on it soon, because
It's been a while.
yeah, not to say that I can like literally see interest in Arkham waning, but I literally actually have the analytics to show the interest in Arkham waning. So it'll be nice to get some new stuff coming out on this, so we can start getting people who have stepped away for a while to come back, because a year is a long time for like enfranchised players. So hopefully soon we get something. I do think that sharing the art is like stuff like this is even just a good way to get people still talking about it. So I'd love to see even more art if there's no cards coming out.
No,
in the near
else I'd
future.
really to say actually standalones that are intended to, that could be standalones but are intended to be inserted into a specific point in the campaign.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It'd be a nice way to revisit Dunwich or Carcosa or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that would be sick. All right, well, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our second ever Arkham Roundtable, where we don't really have an idea what we're going to talk about until it starts. And it's a great one, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any topics that you want to see us discuss, let me know down in the comments. Leave a like, a subscribe, all of that jazz. If you want to support us further, you can find a Patreon link down in the description. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.